Hello everyone, and welcome back to another series of fostering the love of learning in your child. This is part 2. Last week we were discussing how to foster the love of learning in your child, and we talked about quizzing questions and wondering questions and how we can bring back the curiosity in our children and take away the anxiety associated with questions and quizzes and all that. So today we're going to be focusing on part 2, and we will look at the prepared adult and the prepared environment. These are common concepts in the Montessori method, and we're going to be learning about it. My name is Nkemsinachi, and I'm the founder of the Montessori Home Education Academy. There we run a program for parents who we believe are the first teachers, and we teach them how to teach their own children and how to use everyday life activities and everyday materials in their home to teach their children. And ultimately, we help them to become the prepared adults who we're going to be learning about today. So if you don't know me, that is my name and that is what I do. And we're going to be diving right into part 2. Now, one of the things you want to know is who exactly is a prepared adult? What does this mean? The prepared adult is someone who is trained in the Montessori method, or someone who is at least aware of how it works, who has the right skills to manage their children, treat them in the way that they can actually receive the information and the knowledge that we try to share, and be able to call out the best from the child, right? To be able to observe them, to be able to work with their sensitive periods, their learning styles, their own inbuilt, their own inherent qualities and talents. So this is what a prepared adult is able to do. A prepared adult is also able to set up an environment in a way that will best foster the child's love of learning, which is what we are looking at today. So at the Montessori Home Education Academy, one of the things we try to do is to prepare the adults who are the parents, right? You that are listening to me, and even teachers and any other person that is interested in this topic, really. Another thing too, even though it is called the prepared adult, we also have sometimes the siblings, right? You might have older siblings. While we focus right now on the early childhood 0 to 6, you might have older siblings who, if they are not also coached on how to really handle certain things, they could also be countering some of the things you're putting in place as a prepared adult. We believe that parents are the first teachers, and they have an advantage, with the small number at home compared to any classroom you want to have. And whether you're doing homeschooling, full-time, part-time, I normally say it, or even if your child is fully in school, as long as you're working with your child at some point, you're doing assignments with them, supporting them with some projects, and even just trying to help them with certain things. Or if you find that you're already considering a lesson teacher, for example, for your 5-year-old, your 6-year-old, because of some academic things or the other, then this is definitely for you. So you want to sit through and pay attention. So the prepared adult is able to get skilled on how to teach their children, on even knowing what the child is able to learn. Because sometimes we think certain things are out of reach or they are too advanced for a child. For example, looking at this globe here, we have the sandpaper globe and we have the colored globe in the Montessori curriculum for culture and science. Now, you might see it and say, they should be playing with flashy toys. Why, we're already jumping into geography. That's too much for a child. Meanwhile, when we learn about sensitive periods, when we learn about children's abilities, children's interests, and how much they're able to soak up from their environment as long as you put it, there for them, we realize that there's so much we can be teaching them in a low pressure environment now that there's, everything is like play for them. So these are certain things that a prepared adult has to learn about and then be able to teach their children. Our goal is not usually to bombard you with a lot of activities, say, oh, today do this with your child, keep them busy. I wrote an article the other time and that I shared about, it's not about keeping them busy, but keeping them engaged. There are so many things that children can be doing, real life things. It's not always about flashy toys or children things, whatever we call as children things. Just a lot of lessons can be found in everyday life activities, our regular environment and our regular natural outdoor, indoor, outdoors, right? But you need to know about it as a prepared adult. So that is one of the things that can help with fostering the love of learning in the child. When the adult is trained, when the adult is skilled. For example, in part 1, which I said, if you haven't seen it, make sure you watch it after this video. We're talking about fostering the love of learning by the kind of questions that we asked the children. So I talked about quizzing questions versus wondering questions. So now, if the adult is not trained or is not aware that some of these things that we do can actually be, dampening the child's curiosity or even dampening their confidence, that is already something that can block the child's love of learning. We are trying to foster the love that children have for learning, they already have it by default, that curiosity, and we want to build on it. But if we're not aware of the skills that we need to have and how we need to do certain things, we might end up, crushing that curiosity and making them to become so, just focusing on the academics, passing exams, and no longer interested in learning, which is not good, because you cannot teach a child everything, but if you get them interested in learning, then they can begin to teach themselves. They can begin to choose what they want to learn about. And if you're familiar with this, you realize that if a child comes to you and says, please teach me this, they are very, very ready to soak it up. But if you're the one always trying to push things on them, oh, come learn this, come learn that, you'll see that the resistance is usually more. So we want to make sure that we are building that skill in them, building that value in them, and honing the interest that they already have. Every child has their own interests. They are the general ones, but then there are also some, that are tied to their talents, tied to their personalities, which we, as the prepared adults, are now able to call out of them, to refine it, to refine those skills in them. So that is what we learn as prepared adults, and that is one thing we can do to be able to support our children's love of learning. Of course, we support that a lot in the Home Education Academy. I had a parent share with me how, with some of the things she was learning in the program, she was able to, I think just from going on a walk with her children, she started showing them certain things and saying, oh, this is this, this is that, do you know this, do you know that? And then they are getting excited. So within a casual 5-10 minute walk, which they were going to do anyways, they've also learned a lot of things. Now, if you are not familiar with even the subject areas, for instance, in the Montessori method or in the Montessori curriculum, or even general, sometimes our children are going to school, we have the basics, oh, they're doing maths, English, whatever subjects, right? But we may not believe that we are able to actually know what is being covered. Some of the times we might even be intimidated, like, oh, I don't know, I'm not a teacher, I'm just, if they bring assignments, let me look at it and see how I can help. We feel sometimes worried that we're not able to handle some of these things, but part of the program, what we do is to really expose you to all these subject areas and break it down in a way that is very simple, and you realize that, oh, this is what they're learning, I can teach it, right? Because first of all, you will learn as the parent, and then you will now find a way to break it down for your own child, the child that you have. So that is why it is very, very key as the parent to get knowledge, to work on yourself, and to get the information that you need, and also the how, the method, to be able to pass this across in a way that they can learn it. So that is kind of a bit about the prepared adult. And then the second part that we also like to look at is the prepared environment. So if behind me you can see this is a shelf. One of the things that have attracted me to the Montessori method before I went to do my training was really some of all these fancy pictures and videos you see of how everything just looks so organized and beautiful. In fact, it's actually a very specific quality of Montessori material that it has to be beautiful and attractive to the child. So I know I wrote an article about not using toy boxes. So imagine if all these things that we have here were stashed in a box. The child is not going to be attracted to them, not to talk of wanting to play with them. I mean, sometimes we have, because it looks somewhat easy to clean up, right? For the adult, if you're the one cleaning up, or even if you're telling the child to clean up, we might feel it's easy to just say, clean up your toys, put everything in one big box, and when you want to play, bring out everything, and it's just chaos. But it's not, I mean, when we know better, we do better, right? If you look at this shelf, for instance, of course, it's not always like this, but this is the idea. We have certain subject areas represented here. So now these are the Montessori music bells, where you have the solfa notation, so do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You have the bells, one set, you have another set at the back, and it's arranged here. The child can easily see it. We have some sticks, for playing on this. So if a child comes into this room, for example, they might be interested in that and see, oh, this is shiny, I want to play with it, right? Already it's on display. So we're going into the prepared environment already, how things are set up in your home, or how even the toys and the materials that you have are set up for them to see and then get attracted. So if a child is in a sensitive period for music, they might get drawn to this, or even just the natural appeal, the way it's shining, they might want to touch it, right? Or another child might come in, and this is on the other end, this is geography, part of culture and science, and they might say, what is this, right? Depending on if the child has already been familiar with the Montessori method, they might have seen it already, or they might just ask about it, and you begin to explain, oh, this is representing the earth, we're on the earth, and they can touch it. I have a different video, I think, where I shared about the sandpaper globe and that was part of the Montessori Home Education Program, but Basically, gives a sensorial feel. They start from this, learning about how the earth is made up of sand, land and water, and gradually they move to this one. So again, as it is sitting here on this shelf, it's attractive. They can get drawn to it. We have another part of the shelf that has books. Most times people have a different bookshelf, but it's really up to you, as long as you're able to display materials in a way that is attractive to the child. On this end, we also have a sensorial activity. These are pom-poms, which a child can sort into. These are empty fruit baskets, which the child can sort, for playing with colors. And if the child is done with it and you say clean up, it's easy to say put the pom-pom back in the basket, right? And they learn about order in their environment, which is very key. So you also have another example here. These are sandpaper letters, right? So the prepared environment, I don't know if you're already getting the picture. Now this is just one shelf, of course. The whole house is not made up of shelves, but what you're going to learn, there's a book I'm even working on. I'm hoping it will be available to you all soon. I believe it will be very helpful to parents. What it's going to tell you about how you can set up your environment in your own home to make things more, more accessible to your children, to draw them to learn. So imagine, I think when my daughter was showing interest in telling the time and clocks, I basically decommissioned one of our clocks, which I didn't like so much anyways. It was getting... Anyway, I decommissioned the clock, and then I had this printable made, with the faces of the clock and the time. And then I put it on a tray, and I think I put it near her bed or somewhere in her room where she could see it. So you learn how to arrange things strategically in your home so that the child sees it and begins to ask questions. Because once they ask you the question, it already means they are primed to learn, which is very, very important. But if your environment is not set up in a way where they can even see these items when you set it up, if they have 1,001 toys all over the place, which sometimes we don't even realize when it just suddenly happens and gets to that point. I think we've all been there at some point. I know I had a point where maybe there were just different things and I had to do a sort of reset and just took everything away and then brought back just 2 or 3 items, right? So sometimes if you're not even aware that this is a problem, you may not be able to address it. And then if they have too many things stimulating in the environment, they have this toy, they have this bike, they have all this left and right, then they can't even be drawn to anything, and we might see ourselves complaining, oh, they're not concentrating, they're moving from one thing to the other. When you have 2, 3 items in the environment, you're more likely to pick and work with those 2, 3 items. And if you have 10, you're more likely to want to move to all those 10 items. That's just how it works. The prepared environment aims to put things on display depending on the child's interest, or if you have more than one child, you might, like if you have an infant that is already moving around, you might have things that would interest the infant on the bottom shelf and things for the older child on the top shelf. But the shelf is not where it stops. Just like books, for instance, if you want to build a child's interest in books, it's good to have books on the bookshelf, but the bookshelf, you may not have bookshelves in every single room, right? Even if you have a library, that is just one spot. You may find that you need to have little baskets maybe in every room with a few books so that wherever they are seeing these books. So you have the prepared environment, working for you and building that love of learning. Again, the love of learning is what we are trying to foster with the environment. And another thing that you're going to learn is with children, for example, accessibility is very key. Again, in the book, I talk a lot about this and how, sometimes like it's very helpful when we see some stores that are set up, or even some like buildings, churches, hotels, where you have, a ramp where that is wheelchair accessible, right? Because then it means the person is able to navigate by themselves, right? Now, picture children, for instance, who are, they are small, they're just growing, they can't reach anything, even things that are safe for them to reach, they can't reach, they need to ask you all the time. So there are 2 key questions I like to ask. I've shared it in one of my blog. 2 key questions that you can start with that would even help you go on this prepared environment journey. Now, one of them is, ask yourself, do you have any particular thing you can say your child is always asking you for help with? Oh, maybe help me get a cup of water. Oh, I need this, I need that. What is that thing, that one that that is just standing out in your head that every time this child or these children are asking for this? And then when you write it down, the next thing you ask yourself is, what can you do to help them help themselves? there's a quote, one of the Montessori quotes that the child is saying, help me to help myself. Sometimes they don't just want, they're asking you for help because they can't do it by themselves, because the environment is not accessible for them. I remember another parent in the Montessori Home Education Program sharing with me how I think there was just one simple tool I mentioned to them that they could purchase, which wasn't too expensive, but it made a big, in fact, she was like, if that was the only thing she got in the program, right, that she had gotten enough, right? So sometimes we just need to look at our environment and know what can we change to really make it child-friendly. Are we still using glass tables when we have little children running around? You need to make a change. Some of these things are temporary, but a prepared environment ultimately will give a child freedom of movement, freedom to choose their activities, right? And all this freedom is within boundaries, right? It's not as if they're just free to run wild and break everything or scatter everything. But when you make the environment accessible for them, then you're going to have a child who is able to explore, to be curious and to ask the right questions. I also wanted to share another example, like with part 1 of this series, which was the live video we did last week. I talked about how an example of a quizzing question and a wondering question, where instead of saying okay, what is this, what is that, like I was trying to teach my 4-year-old introduce her to the concept of vertebrates and invertebrates, because before then we had already done living and non-living things. And then I just thought about, okay, how can I present this to her in a way that will attract her curiosity and see if she wants to learn about it or not. Now I know it may look like, oh, why am I asking if she wants? You need to teach them everything. No. Again, when you know that these are a range of things they can be learning at a certain age, then you know that there's no rush to try to teach everything at once. What you're doing is testing the waters, right? As long as they are learning continuously, as long as they're in the right environment, you know that ultimately they're going to cover what they need to cover at the right time. So, for example, with teaching about vertebrates and invertebrates, I was like, oh, do you know that, after we had done living and non-living things, I could say, oh, do you know you're a vertebrate? Or do you know we have vertebrates and invertebrates? But how I even started it, I want to share a tray that I just prepared and put it in the center table of the living room. So I don't know if you can see this. So here this says vertebrates. Yeah, you can see it a bit. And this says invertebrates. So I used the paper with the tape to divide the tray, and then I put, this is a part of the body puzzle that we have, so representing the main vertebrates, and then you have a horse, you have an alligator, a couple of other vertebrates, right, on one side, and then you have the invertebrates. Now these are, I've forgotten what you call, these are figurines, a housefly, a butterfly on this side, and then you can begin to say, if you just put this on display, for example, on the center table, it's very likely that she will go to it and say, what is this? And the moment you see that interest, then you begin to ask those questions. Do you know this, that you are a vertebrate, right? Of course, vertebrates will sound at least interesting and curious for the child. But if they don't show any interest at all, then at worst or at most, whichever way, they will play with the animals and they will walk away. But then they've seen it for the first time. Again, I have another video where I talked about the importance of layering. So even if all that she does that first day is to see and even hear the word vertebrate and invertebrate, that's already an achievement. By the next day, when we bring it up again, or 2 days later, she might become more curious and she will learn more things, right? So, but if the environment is cluttered, there's so many things all over the place, even if I put this on the center table, she's not even going to see it, right? So I cannot foster that love of learning. I cannot build that interest. So that's just an example of how it works. And another thing I wanted to share is that one of the things you can start, for example, implement immediately after doing this video is stop buying random toys. No matter how flashy it looks, no matter how educative it looks, you have to make informed decisions. Save your resources to actually learn how the Montessori method works, or even to learn generally how early childhood education works, because our children, it's almost like superpowers, really, when we look about how the absorbent mind works, the way they're able to pick language easily, the way they're able to pick certain concepts easily. I know some of us may have even wondered now, like talking to a 4-year-old about vertebrates and invertebrates, is that not too much? Or talking to a 4-year-old about how we have so and so continents, is that not too much? Or even a 3-year-old, because some of these things start from 2.5 years oh, because of their interest, right? Or talking about telling the time. But then when you realize that they're actually ready to learn some of these things if you approach it the right way and it's in a low pressure environment, then you see that not doing it is actually a missed opportunity, because when they learn these things at the right time with low pressure in a form of play, then by the time it starts coming up in school, it's not even a big deal. They're not trying to cram it or trying to just replicate it and pour without actually knowing what they're doing. So again, just remembering that the goal is to foster the love of learning. You cannot teach your child everything, and that's why it's very key for us to understand this concept. So I was just also going to share with us one of the key things that we do in the Montessori Home Education Program, especially if you're not familiar with it, and if maybe you're not part of the last cohort that is just rounding up this year. We have the next cohort starting in 2025, and it promises to be very, very, in fact, I'm really excited planning for it and working towards it, because the last time we had it for about 7 months there, but next year is going to be a full 12 months program. So every month you have something to do and something to learn in a very simplified way. I think one of the feedbacks that I kept getting from the parents is it's so simple, like it's so simplified. Again, I know some of us might feel intimidated with, oh, I can't teach my child mathematics. I just managed it in school myself, right? So I can't teach my child this, that. Or you want to plan lesson teachers for your children. When you realize that you can do this from the comfort of your own home, you can learn the basics that you need just to give them that interest, to give them that curiosity, and they will teach themselves. Then you realize that it's not as hard as you think, and it's more or less to their advantage and to your own advantage as a family. Because if you're now working with even more than one child, you see, it's like one of those jokes where they'll say the teacher came into the class and says, who knows this? Some people raise their hand and say, oh, those that know should teach those that don't know, and all those, I can't remember the full joke anyways. But when you learn the things that we do in the program with every month and how we touch all the curriculum areas, and also when you learn how to teach, how to prepare the environment, how to prepare yourself as an adult, and how to work with your children to their own advantage and using their own skills, their own talents, it's definitely going to be very beneficial for you. So if you haven't already done so, please make sure you join the waitlist. The link will be in the video description. We also have a free Montessori community on WhatsApp where we share tips, resources. We also have a parents community. Another benefit you get from the Montessori Home Education Program is that support. So we have monthly webinars every month focusing on a particular subject area, like I said. For example, culture and science, you learn about geography, history, botany, zoology, things that might sound so high level, but really when we break it down, it's very simple. And you'll see how you can teach even from your infant, what you can expose them to up to your 4 to 5 or 6 year old, right? And then you learn about sensorial, music and arts education, you learn about movement, you learn about mathematics, language with focus on English language, even reading and writing, some basic things that you need to do. So these are all things you're going to be learning in very simplified ways and in bits and pieces that you're able to now roll out for your own children and build their love of learning those subjects and build their interest. So yes, our website link will also be there with some more details about the program. Make sure you start planning for it. Join the waitlist to get more information. And I think I really enjoyed this session with you guys. I hope you learned something. Please share in the comment section any questions that you have. What would you like us to talk about next? We already have a question pending about how to read, and I plan to do a video where I share how, my 4-year-old, she's reading now, she learned about 3.5 years, what steps that we took. We used a combination of the Montessori method and a couple of other blends here and there. So I'm going to be sharing that in one of our videos. Let me know what else you would like to talk about. What are the things your children are currently interested in that you would like to hear more about? So I'll see you all at the next session. Take care, and until next time, have a good day.